Hi, it's Katrina. The Maru Janjira. The Maru Janjira is an ancient fort in India steeped in history and mystery. These days, it's a national tourist hotspot, but in the past, it protected locals from attacks perpetrated by both the British and the Portuguese. It goes all the way back to the 15th century, with its origins being quite simple. The fishermen who lived in the area, people whose lives depended on fish from the sea, built a wooden fortress on some coastal rocks to protect themselves from pirates. That was a pretty serious problem back then, and this small wooden fortress out on the coast was great protection. It made the pirates think twice before they attacked. Over the years, the fortress was improved. Turrets were installed, huge bastions were erected, and cannons and guns were placed to rain fire down on sea invaders. It's believed that at one point, the fortress had at least 572 cannons. It was an almost indestructible island of stone and gunpowder. They could shoot in any direction with more force than any ship could defend itself against. But after so many years as a powerful blockade, the Maru Janjira fort is not the wonderful structure it was long ago. Out of the 572 cannons, there are only 3 left standing. Other attractions at the fort include a royal palace, mosques, houses of noblemen, stables, granaries, and underground tunnels. Many of these structures are connected, and you can also see freshwater tanks that sustain the residents for long periods of time. Idanre Hill. Idanre Hill is a tiny, invisible village in the Nigerian state of Ondo. But just by looking at pictures of this place, you would never think it was in West Africa. It looks like something out of a fantasy, with one of the strangest and yet captivating landscapes in the world. This is because the town was built in the middle of a collection of giant boulders called the Idanre Boulders. These are enormous stones of an igneous batholith formed over 500 million years ago. Across the grassy landscape, they rise like smooth mountains and disappear into the clouds. But that's just the landscape. The history here is equally fascinating. The people who live amongst the boulders, mists, and grassy valleys of Idanre Hill did so for thousands of years in complete secrecy. It wasn't until the 1800s that they were contacted by Western civilization. They were perfectly untouched, living simplistic lives in a remote region of Africa. Being surrounded by impassable mountains had made them somewhat impervious to attack. They had lived in their village in peace and tranquility until about 200 years ago. Then they were invaded by the modern world. The native Yoruba community who live in Idanre Hill worshipped gods based on the huge Idanre boulders until the 1800s. But they don't worship their earthly idols any longer, thanks to Christian missionaries in 1894, who basically eradicated all previous belief systems. Most people here are Christian now, though they do still keep some of their traditions. Aztec floating gardens. In Mexico City, a mysterious Aztec home has been discovered. The ruins of this residential dwelling are over 800 years old, constructed near the last days of the Aztec Empire. It was discovered by researchers with Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History in the Centro neighborhood. Workers were modernizing the area, adding electrical power substations, when they came across the unbelievable ruins. The abode spans over 4,300 square feet. It was built sometime between 1200 and 1521. Based on that time frame, experts are confident the house was right on the border of 2 major neighborhoods in the capital city of Tenochtitlan. But here's what's really fascinating. The entire area today seems moderate enough, with simple houses, businesses, tangles of electric cords overhead, and cars honking in the streets. But 800 years ago, the neighborhood was rich with waterways and nature. The archaeologists discovered a jetty where boats would have loaded and unloaded cargo. The house had its own dock and probably would have been at the edge of a lake or a city canal. And that's not all the archaeologists found. Underneath the floor of the house, they discovered funerary vessels, the remains of several infants, as well as tools, and an enormous stone statue. They also discovered evidence that after the Spanish invasion of the city, this house, which probably belonged to someone of great wealth, was transformed into a public bathhouse. The team uncovered leftovers of bathroom floor tiles, bulky pipes, and a drainage system, along with secure concrete plates, thermal resources that were exposed to high temperatures, and European building materials. First, it was a person's home. Then the Spanish turned it into a spa. The medieval Outer Hebrides. An incredibly rare medieval site was just discovered in Scotland, in the Outer Hebrides. Water engineers were digging up a field to lay some new pipe on the Isle of Lewis when they found some ancient ruins. They came across pits, post holes, and stone remnants of what appears to have been a sheep management facility. The researchers also discovered over 100 scraps of pottery, fish bones, and other unidentified animal remains. According to archaeologist Alastair Rees, this site probably dates back to about the 14th century. This was when the most powerful rulers of northern Scotland were being deposed. The region of the Outer Hebrides was shrinking, and the people were leaving. Then, in 1493, the great John MacDonald II had his land seized by the tyrannical James IV of Scotland. Because of the turmoil that was happening in this part of Scotland between 600 and 400 years ago, not much from that time remains. There is almost no physical evidence of the medieval period in the Western Isles. That's what makes this discovery so rare. We don't actually know what the medieval site is. Judging by the animal bones and the size, it was probably some kind of sheep farm. But nobody has any idea who lived here, if they did indeed raise sheep, or why the place was abandoned. Cabal el Haridi. Cabal el Haridi is without a doubt one of the most mysterious archaeological sites in the Sohag region of Egypt. Material has been found here from the 6th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, from the days of occupation by the late Roman Empire, and even from the Coptic period. The Sohag region of Egypt has been occupied ever since about 2700 BC, for about 5,000 consecutive years. The most recent season of excavation saw researchers uncover a mysterious mud brick tower. They believe the tower, which was erected overlooking the Nile River and directly beside the major thoroughfare leading into the region, was a guard tower. The mud brick structure was probably occupied by guards who watched day and night for anyone moving up the road. Then they could bully travelers for money, saying it was taxes, and they could keep a register of everyone entering their part of Egypt. This was during the Ptolemaic dynasty under the rule of Ptolemy III, between 246 and 222 BC. There have been all kinds of other amazing discoveries here as well. The team also came across a temple built at the same time as the tower. It's one of the most splendid temples in this part of the country, dedicated to the Egyptian goddess Isis. Isis is one of the main characters in the Egyptian mythos, resurrected by Osiris to give birth to the great god Horus. Plus, over 85 tombs have been found in the area carved into the side of a mountain. There are so many tombs and burials and mummies hiding underground that researchers have barely scratched the surface at Sohag. Baconi Ruins. The Baconi Ruins in South Africa, in the hills of the Mpumalanga province, were probably once part of a large settlement built by the Baconi people in the 16th century. That would make them only about 500 years old. Some historians believe the ruins are much older, with some radical theories claiming them to be as old as 250,000 years. That's quite a difference of opinion, but nobody has ever been able to properly date the ruins. Hardly anything remains of whatever was once standing here. The ruins are nothing but the remnants of walls forming a crude labyrinth. According to Professor Peter Delius from the University of Witwatersrand, the Baconi people of South Africa practiced advanced agriculture and had sophisticated technological know-how. They altered the landscape to better manage their livestock and enhance their agricultural yields through irrigation in the grasslands. Researchers don't know exactly when they were doing all of this. The theory of them being 250,000 years old is not a realistic theory. It would mean that Paleolithic humans were building structures in this part of the world when everywhere else they were living in caves, living primitive lives. The Baconi ruins remain a mystery, since we don't know when they were made, what purpose they served, or even if they were part of some great lost city of South Africa. Researchers believe it's possible to save the ancient sites if the government invests more in the tourism expansion industry. It will not only preserve the Baconi ruins, but also make the residents surrounding them aware of their existence. Protecting and restoring the ruins could also create tourism prospects and boost the local economy. Underground Turkey. An archaeological excavation in Turkey has revealed what researchers say could be the largest underground city on Earth. A mysterious cave was discovered in the province of Mardin, and within that cave, researchers found passageways leading deep underground, a subterranean maze of water wells, food silos, mysterious altars, and dwellings dating back to the 2nd century AD. Gani Tarkan from the local Mardin Museum, the lead excavator on the project, told news sources that the region had been inhabited in solitude for 1900 years. He believes the underground city was first built as a hiding place where early Christians could escape persecution. But as more and more families accepted Christianity, more people moved into the underground city and it flourished. Then, after several hundred years, when Christianity became widespread and mainstream, the city kept on being used because it was already so vast. What researchers don't know yet is why the city was abandoned or how everyone forgot about it. The tunnels were in use until just a few decades ago by the looks of things, and yet everyone forgot it was there. It's one of over 200 ancient underground settlements in Turkey, but by far the biggest. Researchers say it could have held up to 70,000 people, more than most common cities in North America, and all underground, deep in the dirt, and far from the sunlight of the world above. Zeuss Temple in Egypt. In Greek mythology, Zeus was the god of gods. He was the lord of the sky, the omnipresent king of thunder and lightning, who lived on Mount Olympus and looked down on all the lowly humans below. But what many people don't realize is that Zeus's influence went far beyond the borders of Greece. And just recently, a temple dedicated to the most famous Greek deity in history was discovered in the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. The mysterious temple was made in honor of Zeus Cassios, a somewhat unique version of the Greek god. This version of Zeus was more closely connected to Mount Cassios than Mount Olympus. This mountain, which is on the border of modern Syria and Turkey, is connected to the mythical battle which took place between Zeus and the great monster Typhon. Zeus won the battle using his lightning bolt and prevented Typhon from taking over the cosmos. And because the mountain, known today as Jebel Akra, is frequently besieged by thunderstorms, it makes sense that the ancient people of the region saw it as having ties to Zeus. The temple was identified by Egyptian archaeologists, but it was no easy feat. It's utterly destroyed, with its huge pink granite pillars broken in pieces, probably from an earthquake. Researchers found granite blocks and fragments of a staircase, but that's pretty much it. The mysterious discovery of Machu Picchu. Nearly everyone knows what Machu Picchu is, or at least they know what it looks like and they know it's in Peru. But even if you're familiar with this great Inca city, you might not know how it was actually discovered, because just over 100 years ago, this was still a lost city, never seen by modern humans. The man who first discovered Machu Picchu was Hiram Bingham, an American adventurer born in Hawaii in 1875. His parents were missionaries and hoped that he would follow in their footsteps, but he didn't. After going to Yale University in 1894, he became fascinated with Latin American history. He married Alfreda Mitchell in 1900, the heiress to the Tiffany jewelry fortune. Well, exploring is expensive. In 1906, he retraced the route Simón Bolívar took through Venezuela and Colombia in the 1820s. He explored trade routes in South America in 1909, following an ancient caravan trail all the way from Buenos Aires to Lima. And in 1911, he went in search of a mysterious lost city. Rumor had been circulating about a lost city for quite some time. It was said to be the last refuge of the Inca people as they fought against their Spanish conquerors in the 1530s. Hiram journeyed to Cusco, traveled on foot through the sweltering heat of the jungle, and then wound up high in the Andes Mountains. And that was when he found Machu Picchu. He spent days climbing up the mountains until he discovered a small hut occupied by a family of peasants. They were shocked to see foreigners and agreed to show Hiram the ruins in the mountains. And that was when he found the Inca stonework of Machu Picchu covered in trees, overgrown with tangles of vines, almost completely blanketed in moss and crowded with bamboo thickets. The Machu Picchu you see today has actually been cleaned and cleared. When it was found in 1911, nobody knew what it was. It didn't have a name, and it was covered in a thick cloud forest. The Great Cholula Pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Cholula is the biggest pyramid in the entire world, currently buried under a mountain in Mexico, with a Spanish church sitting on top of it. You wouldn't even know there was a pyramid simply by looking, since it's all overgrown with grass and trees. The only thing you can see is the church way up at the top, along with the ancient ruins all around its base. The pyramid was built over 2,000 years ago, and it practically dwarfs the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yet the origin of this monument still puzzles archaeologists to this day. It has architectural elements from the Teotihuacan culture as well as from El Tajín civilization, but nobody knows who built it or why it was abandoned. One theory is that the Aztecs were using it and then ran away when the Spanish came, but before they left, they buried the pyramid with dirt to preserve a piece of their culture. Maybe they knew the Spanish were already destroying every piece of indigenous heritage, and so the pyramid was disguised so that it would be preserved if they could ever return. The Messel Pit. Around 48 million years ago, thousands of animals mysteriously died in a deep lake near what is now the German city of Darmstadt. For some mysterious reason, the lake became a death trap for countless animals. Their remains were preserved by layers of clay and dead algae, and they sat untouched until the late 19th century. By then, the lake that had existed during the Eocene, when global temperatures and sea levels were much higher, was long gone. Miners arrived to the site in the middle of the forest, attracted by the fossil fuels, and carved out an open pit mine. It became known as the Messel Pit. The mine closed during the 1970s. The fossils inside were pretty much forgotten about by nearly everyone, except a small group of scientists and other activists who opposed turning the site into a garbage dump. They won the battle in 1992, and excavations have been ongoing ever since. Most paleontological sites are closed to the public, but the Messel Pit offers guided tours to visitors. An unusually large number of fossilized land mammals have been found there, and scientists still aren't sure why. They think that carbon dioxide from an underwater volcano may have bubbled up and suffocated all the creatures near the shore. It's also possible that the animals could have died from drinking water that contained toxic algae blooms, or may have been washed into the lake by nearby streams that drained into it. In any case, it is full of prehistoric creatures with their fur and even flesh still intact. There have been thousands of animals found at the pit, including 45 different mammals. Some of the most fascinating are an extinct squirrel 3 feet long and prehistoric pregnant horses. It's like a time capsule that allows scientists to reconstruct the world as it used to be. England's largest sea dragon. Earlier this year, scientists announced the discovery of what might be the largest and most complete sea dragon fossil ever found in the UK. Measuring 33 feet long, the prehistoric creature lived around 180 million years ago. Paleontologists are calling it one of the greatest finds in British paleontological history, and there have been a lot of fossils found there. This sea monster was a type of marine reptile called an ichthyosaur that had a long snout and big teeth. It looked a bit like a modern dolphin, except scarier. While the species, scientifically known as Temnodontosaurus trigonodon, was already known before the discovery, this is the first time it's been unearthed in the UK. A conservation worker named Joe Davis found the fossil early last year while walking through the area with a colleague. They noticed what looked like vertebrae sticking out of the mud and followed the bones until they came across what looked like a jawbone, at which point the men knew they had probably discovered an enormous fossil. For now, scientists are continuing to study and conserve the fossil and will release their studies later on. Strange ancient eel. In 1890, a bizarre eel-like fossil was found in a Scottish quarry, leaving scientists stumped about what it was exactly. It lived between 398 and 385 million years ago, long before the first dinosaurs emerged into existence. The toothless creature, dubbed Paleospondylus gunni, measured just 2.4 inches long and may have had a cartilaginous skeleton along with well-developed fins, but no limbs. There have been numerous attempts to identify the ancient animal, with various studies suggesting that it was an early lungfish, a hagfish, or perhaps a shark-like species. But the truth is that scientists have been baffled for over 130 years since its discovery. And the one thing they can all agree on is that the mystery continues even though many more fossils of the species have been found. Experts have gotten one step closer to placing this creature in the evolutionary tree thanks to high-resolution imaging. Their findings suggest that the species could even be one of our earliest ancestors. The team determined that the creature's ear canal was constructed similarly to modern fish, birds, and mammals, making it more advanced along the evolutionary timeline than some species that are more primitive, like the jawless hagfish. Its cranial features place it in a group with all other four-limbed creatures, and, even more shockingly, indicate that it could be the ancestor of all tetrapods. Lead study author Tatsuya Hirasawa told Life Science that the prehistoric fish is related to both vertebrates with limbs and fingers, as well as animals with limb-like fins. But it was probably more closely related to limb-bearing tetrapods, making it a close ancestor of the first creatures that walked on land. It's unusual that paleospondylus lack teeth and obvious appendages, but they may not have been fossilized. The specimens found may have been at a larval or juvenile stage, or these features may have been lost due to evolution, according to Hirasawa. And while this species has not been definitively placed on the evolutionary timeline, the findings are promising. Dinosaur Reaper. Around 80 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, in what is now Japan, a dinosaur roamed around on two legs equipped with large knife-like fingers on its upper limbs. Based on a recently identified foot bone fossil, scientists have determined that it belonged to a group of bipedal, three-toed dinosaurs called therizinosaurs. And while the species may have had terrifying claws like Edward Scissorhands, they used them for slashing vegetation rather than eating other animals, although it probably didn't hesitate to use them to defend itself. The specimen, dubbed Paralitherozinosaurus japonicus, close enough, was found in 2008 on the northernmost Japanese island of Hokkaido in an area that is known for being rich in fossil deposits. At the time, experts believed it was a therizinosaur, but they had little to compare it to in terms of data. Since then, many other fossils have been found, making it possible for scientists to identify the scissorhands dinosaur as one that evolved later on during the therizinosaur lineage. Its specialized claws were a key indicator, as compared to the regular claws of earlier species that were not designed for any specific use. While it's impossible to know how large P. japonicus was, it's clear that the dinosaur was big and may have measured up to 30 feet long and weighed as much as 3 tons. Other therizinosaur fossils have been found throughout Asia and in North America. It's believed that the group adapted to coastal life at the time. Researchers are currently working to describe 2 other unidentified specimens that were found in Japan. Demon ducks. Back in 1981, scientists discovered the charred remnants of prehistoric eggs that had been cooked in fires by ancient humans. The fossils date back an estimated 50,000 years. Some were identified as emu eggs, but others appeared to be the oversized eggs of an unknown bird species that scientists would spend the next several decades arguing over. What kind of bird were they? The ongoing debate narrowed the likely species to 2 contenders: a member of a group of large turkey-like birds known as progura, or the infamous demon ducks of doom, which go by the scientific name Genyornis. New research has proven beyond a doubt that the demon duck of doom was the winner. Also nicknamed Australia's last thunderbird, the intimidating bird stood at 6.5 feet tall and weighed up to 530 pounds. Its eggs were also very large, with each weighing as much as 3.5 pounds, and they would have been a great source of protein for Indigenous Australians. There's even evidence that the human appetite for the creature's eggs may have driven it to extinction, according to the Natural History Museum in London. Researchers analyzed the ancient shell fragments using a technique called protein sequencing. Because the egg's DNA had deteriorated over time, it was a good alternative to genetic testing. The team compared the results to the genomes of modern birds and were finally able to put the 41-year-old mystery to rest. Would you eat a demon duck of doom egg? Let me know in the comments below. Crocodile face dino. One of the largest predators to ever exist was a massive crocodile-faced, spiny-backed dinosaur that lived around 125 million years ago in what is now England. fossilized fragments of the newly discovered species, nicknamed the White Rock Spinosaurid, was found off the country's southern coast on the Isle of Wight. It has yet to be given a name, but it has been identified as the youngest spinosaurid ever found in the UK. Equipped with a slender neck and sturdy arms, spinosaurids were carnivorous dinosaurs that roamed the Earth during the Cretaceous period. The newly described creature was related to the older, possibly amphibious, Spinosaurus. It measured at least 33 feet long and may have been Europe's biggest predatory dinosaur during its time. Few spinosaurid fossils have been found, making the group somewhat of a mystery to scientists. Experts believe that they most likely hunted in bodies of water, including lakes, rivers, and lagoons. It's unclear how they caught their prey. Some scientists think they actively swam in pursuit of their target, while others believe they waded and then snatched up their dinner using their long jaws. The discovery of the White Rock Spinosaurid supports researchers' claims that spinosaurids may have first evolved in Europe before spreading elsewhere throughout the prehistoric world. And while the creature was most likely very large, it wasn't immune to predators. Marks on its bones indicate that it was eaten by another frightening member of its habitat. Ancient giraffe relative. Around 17 million years ago, an extinct giraffe relative called Discocarex shiegi lived in what is now northwestern China. With a thick neck and skull, it was equipped for butting heads with rival males in competition for mates. In a new study describing the species for the first time, scientists mentioned that the animal's skull was topped with a layer of keratin that is also seen in modern head-butting species, including rams, bulls, and giraffes. The disc-like structure functioned like a protective helmet, making the creature prepared for hard impact clashes with its adversaries. Researchers believe that the newly described animal's built-in helmet and thick neck are traits that evolved specifically in males. They had high-crowned teeth that were ideal for chewing on grass, and isotope tests indicate that the species was likely an open-land grazer. And while the creature may have been a distant cousin of today's giraffes, it wasn't a direct relative and has been placed on a different branch of the family tree. As part of this study, the team examined the headgear of other extinct giraffe relatives and found that the various species appear to have evolved these features specifically for fighting. Evidence suggests that modern giraffes got their long necks from the victories of past long-necked males who tended to win these battles. This idea has been around for a while. In fact, it was first introduced in 1996, and it flew directly in the face of Charles Darwin's widely accepted theory that giraffes grew long necks to reach the tree leaves they feed on. For now, the debate over how and why giraffes got their ridiculously long necks is ongoing, but experts insist that evolution likely played at least a partial role. Bulldog-faced dinosaur. Located in the Egyptian Sahara Desert, the Bahariya Formation fossil site is famous for being one of the world's most dangerous prehistoric ecosystems. Paleontologists recently discovered a vertebra belonging to a newly described carnivorous dinosaur that lived between 145 million and 66 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period. The creature came from a dinosaur group called Abelisaurids. Like other members of its group, it was bipedal, meaning it walked on 2 feet, and had a shortened face like a bulldog. While the yet unnamed species was large and intimidating, it probably wasn't at the top of its food chain, according to paleontologist Matthew Lamana, who spoke with Live Science about the discovery. A recently published study likens the dinosaur to a heavy-set Tyrannosaurus rex with stubbier arms. Researchers believe that it most likely measured between 16 and 20 feet long, making it a lot smaller than many of the other abelisaurids and other creatures that shared its habitat. In addition to similar dinosaurs, the creature lived alongside giant predatory fish, crocodilians, and marine reptiles that are all extinct today. The American Cheetah. After coming face-to-face with another male member of its species in a cliff cave in America's Grand Canyon around 20,000 years ago, a young cheetah lost the battle when he was bitten through the spine. He died from his injuries while his opponent left the scene. His remains, along with 2 other fossilized specimens retrieved from Grand Canyon caves, recently underwent a study to trace the lineage of the extinct American cheetah. Researchers determined that the species may not have been exceptionally fast runners like modern-day African cheetahs, but that they may have more closely resembled today's snow leopards. This would mean that they favored rocky habitats and ate mountain goats and sheep. When the fossils were first discovered, they were mistakenly identified as belonging to mountain lions, but scientists recently reanalyzed the bones and realized that they belonged to American cheetahs, which were closely related to mountain lions, but had some characteristics more reminiscent of a modern African cheetah, including short snout and a slim body. The American cheetah went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Before then, it was found all over what is now the United States. Scientists even believe that the reason the modern-day pronghorn antelope can run so fast is because at one time, it was tasked with outrunning the American cheetah. None of the species' modern predators reach speeds even close to the antelope's maximum of 60 miles per hour. Yet experts figure that there must have been a reason that they are capable of traveling at such a high speed. The mysteries surrounding the American cheetah and the animals it shared its environment with continue as researchers gather more information. Argentinosaurus. Discovered in 1987 on a farm in southwestern Argentina, the Argentinosaurus genus of sauropods represents one of the largest known land animals of all time. It hails from the diverse Titanosaur family, which consisted of humongous sauropods that existed on every known continent, and many of which thrived up until the dinosaurs went extinct around 66 million years ago. Paleontologists can't seem to agree on exactly how big the creature was, with more generous estimates suggesting that Argentinosaurus was 100 to 130 feet long and weighed as much as 100 tons. But even the more conservative guess about its size, which put the dinosaur's length at 75 to 85 feet from head to tail, and its weight at up to 75 tons, indicate that Argentinosaurus was one of the biggest animals that ever lived. Nobody knows for sure how large the dinosaur actually was, because it's only known from fragmentary remains, leaving scientists tasked with making educated guesses based on the more complete remains of smaller sauropods. Argentinosaurus grew slowly, taking up to 40 years to reach its maximum size. Based on what experts know about other titanosaurs, it probably laid between 10 and 15 eggs at a time, each measuring up to a foot in diameter. Given its size, Argentinosaurus was likely a slow mover, plodding along at a maximum of 5 miles per hour. This would have made the species vulnerable to smaller but faster-moving carnivores that it shared its territory with, like Giganotosaurus, which probably couldn't take it down one-on-one, but may have had strength in numbers. Argentinosaurus is just one candidate among several competitors for the title of the largest land animal that ever lived, including this list right here of names I can't pronounce. Alabama cave art. Scientists have used a new process called photogrammetry to uncover ancient cave carvings in Alabama. These amazing carvings are invisible to the naked eye, only viewable with the use of this fabulous new technology. Archaeologists had to work together with photographers, spending long hours in the gloomy, dark depths of the cave to map the ceilings underneath northern Alabama. But it was worth the effort. They were able to identify ancient carvings made between 1,000 and 1,800 years ago. The carvings are incredibly odd. The researchers identified 4 strange humanoid figures, each one about 6 feet tall, the size of a point guard in the NBA, and dressed in elaborate indigenous clothing. They also found the carving of a massive coiled rattlesnake with its forked tongue sticking out, along with yet another enormous serpent crawling along the wall, this one over 9 feet tall. For reference, that's the size of Goliath. According to this study, many indigenous people who populated what is now Alabama during that time believed that the caves were paths to the underworld, and the art could have spiritual or ritual significance. This is Alabama's 19th unnamed cave, where artwork was originally discovered back in 1998. But scientists with the Ancient Art Archive and archaeologists from the University of Tennessee wanted to find more and had a hunch there could be carvings invisible to the naked eye. And they were right. These carvings faded over time, so they could only be seen again by creating a 3D model of the cave. What's really cool is that with the success of this latest study, chances are there could be other discoveries in countless other caves across the world. Carvings that were made tens of thousands of years ago could be rediscovered using this new 3D technology. Dolphin taste buds. In one of the most interesting animal discoveries in recent history, scientists have learned something shocking about dolphins. According to marine biologist Jason Bruck from Stephen F. Austin State University, dolphins can actually identify their friends based on taste. That's right. With humans, we recognize our friends in three main ways: smiles, voices, and the way they walk. And while biologists have known for many decades that dolphins can form close friendships, they've never known the different ways for the creatures to tell their friends apart. They previously thought these mysterious animals identified their buddies by their unique whistles, but it turns out they actually use their taste buds. Jason and his team of researchers then started observing bottlenose dolphins in the wild. What they found was that dolphins would purposely swim through gigantic clouds of urine. Dolphins leave behind them these kinds of plumes of pee when they need to relieve themselves. And it's the perfect way for identification. Sure, dolphins can tell their friends apart by their whistles, but they can also tell who they're dealing with by tasting their pee as they swim through clouds of urine. You're welcome. Ivan the Terrible's sword. A medieval sword was discovered buried underneath a tree in the Novosibirsk region of Russia. According to scholars, this medieval sword may have once belonged to the notorious Tsar, Ivan the Terrible. It's a unique artifact, one that comes from the time of the conquest of Siberia. It probably originated in Germany, then was transported to the Swedish mainland. There it was fixed with an impressive silver handle and Norse runes on the blade. After, the sword found its way into the royal armory, then into the hands of Ivan the Terrible. So how in the world did this sword end up buried underneath a tree in the middle of nowhere? Expert archaeologists believe it may have been lost during a battle. Ivan the Terrible, who was the Grand Prince of Moscow from 1533 to 1547, then the Tsar until 1584, expanded Russia greatly. He conquered the Khanates of Kazan and pretty much all of Siberia, transforming Russia from a sizable chunk of Eastern Europe into an enormous empire of over 1 billion acres. But because this kind of sword was so rare, only wielded by the most important men in the kingdom, it seems to make sense that it belonged to Ivan. Sadly, we don't actually know for sure. Archaeologists are just speculating based on what little information they have. But it would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? Torch ship. 250 years ago, a British ship was lit up off the coast of Rhode Island by colonists. It happened on June 10, 1772. A group of Rhode Islanders, as an act of rebellion, burned down the HMS Gaspee. The arson helped to spark the American Revolution and the Boston Tea Party over 1 year later. Going on for around 2.5 centuries, nobody has ever found the remains of this mysterious torched vessel. However, that's all about to change. Researchers with the Rhode Island Maritime Archaeology Project have accumulated enough funds and will begin searching for the lost Gaspee, hopefully in July 2022. Archaeologists will use the latest sonar technology and scan the waterline, looking for the Gaspee's burnt hull. It will be the first time anyone's seen this ship since before the United States was a country. But just listen to the reason the Gaspee was burned down in the first place. It was sent by the British to Narragansett Bay to enforce trading laws and discourage smugglers from bringing goods to the colonists. But pretty soon, the colonists were sick of the British authorities stopping their ships and disrupting their trade routes. Then, when the Gaspee accidentally ran itself aground in the middle of chasing a suspected smuggler, colonists descended on the boat with torches. They looted the ship, shot the captain, and set the whole thing ablaze. The Sarcosuchus Imperator. The Sarcosuchus Imperator is by far the largest crocodile that ever lived. It makes any crocodile, alligator, or other crocodilians look like little baby geckos in comparison. The Sarcosuchus is a super croc, whose name is Greek for flesh crocodile. It was a tremendous monster that could grow to its full adult size in about 10 years. Imagine already being 6 feet tall at the age of 10. But the amazing part is that it didn't stop growing and would continue getting bigger and bigger year after year. The biggest Sarcosuchus fossils ever found were of beasts roughly 40 feet from the tip of their nose to the end of their tail. That's about double the size of the biggest saltwater crocodile ever found in modern times. Not only was this prehistoric reptile extremely long, but it was also very heavy. These things weighed probably around 10 tons each, making them serious monsters. And if you're wondering where these extinct behemoths lived, the answer is North Africa. About 100 million years ago, the Sarcosuchus Imperator made its home in the tropical region where today lies the Sahara Desert. Before the Sahara was the biggest desert in the world, it was a hot, humid swamp filled with crocodiles, bigger than school buses. Just want to give a big shout out to Angie Dagcook and SB Meadow 20. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the Origins Explained family. We'd love to have you. The people of the Pacific. For a very long time, scientists haven't fully understood why people colonize the thousands of islands scattered throughout the South Pacific. There are so many Pacific islands, and each one of them seems to have its very own culture going back thousands of years. But obviously, human beings didn't evolve on these small islands. They must have come from somewhere by way of the sea to populate each miniature tropical paradise. Scientists believe they have figured out what happened. They say that within just 3,000 years, a single ancestral group known as the Lapita covered a third of the surface of the Earth, reaching isolated lands by boat. And as these ancestral people moved, they brought with them a distinct Austronesian language and domesticated pigs, dogs, and chickens. Their domesticated animals would decimate the natural island life everywhere they went. But where in the world did these people start out? Scientists believe the Lapita culture began in the northern Philippines. From there, they crept out into the ocean, populating one island at a time, until they spread across all the Pacific about 3,000 years ago. The road to Atlantis. Deep-sea researchers have uncovered what looks like the underwater road to Atlantis. Beneath the waves off the coast of Hawaii, a mysterious cobblestone-like formation has been identified on the sea floor. It looks like an actual cobblestone path, stretching across a huge part of the island's marine national monument, one of the biggest marine conservation areas in the world. The path is distinctly yellow. It breaks apart suddenly as if it had been destroyed thousands of years ago, and it doesn't actually have anything to do with Atlantis. Sadly, this is actually just a dried lake bed formation. It's a fractured flow of volcanic rock that formed during an eruption, probably tens of thousands of years ago. The fact that it looks like a yellow brick road is just a really strange coincidence. What looks like cobblestones are most likely just the result of heating and cooling stress, causing cracks and fractures in the sea floor. Still, there is no denying the strange formation looks like a road leading to some underwater mythical city. It's just a shame the road doesn't actually lead anywhere. Ancient warrior's grave. Scientists have discovered the grave of an ancient warrior who was buried wearing golden jewelry with a sword positioned between his legs in Russia. They were astonished at the range of relics found inside the 2,200-year-old necropolis because it had already been invaded by grave robbers. The warrior was buried wearing chainmail with 2 swords, and they also found a pair of bronze helmets. The warrior's grave, found near the town of Mesme in the Caucasus, included a gold brooch that measured just a little over 2 by 2 inches, with a rock crystal mounted in the center. The scientists who found the necropolis discovered over 12 golden artifacts, along with many weapons, including the 2 helmets. A smaller 19-inch sword included a gold plate, leading the team to state, "The actual fact that these articles were used to decorate weapons sets them apart in a category all of their own, which has so far not been recorded anywhere else." An axe that belonged to the warrior, who researchers said was most likely a chief, was also found, along with animal remains including 3 horses, a cow, and a wild boar skull. A researcher at the Ukrainian National Academy of Sciences Institute of Archaeology said the animals were particularly valuable among barbarian peoples of the ancient world. They also found bones of other animals and pottery in the grave, suggesting that the people held a feast to mark the warrior's death. Grave robbers first found the site in 2004, a year before legitimate excavations began in the necropolis, and officials do not know what may have been taken. The researchers believe the grave was dug between the 3rd century BC and the beginning of the 2nd century AD, but they could not tie the artifacts with any specific culture. Mountains of sugar. Scientists recently discovered that meadows of seagrass on the floor of the ocean actually store massive amounts of sugar inside their fronds. This sugar isn't the white gold you and I are familiar with. Instead, it comes as raw sucrose, and it's released from the seagrass to seep into the soil underneath. What this means is that these vast patches of seagrass are sitting on about 1.3 million tons of sucrose, which is enough to create roughly 32 billion cans of Coca-Cola. To put it even more simply, there are literal mountains of sugar hiding beneath the ocean that nobody ever knew about. According to marine microbiologist Nicole Dubilier, seagrass produces sugar during the process of photosynthesis. Normally, when there are ordinary light conditions, the plants use all these sugars to produce their own growth. But under extremely high light conditions, like in the height of summer, the plants produce too much sugar. They can't store it all, so they release it into the water, and it sinks into the soil where it accumulates. Nobody has any idea right now how to go about harvesting this sugar. And besides, harvesting sugar would mean destroying the mountains of seagrass, which are the most important blue carbon sinks on the planet. To give you an idea of how important these plants are, they suck up about twice as much carbon as a land forest of the same size and dispose of it 35 times as quickly. Even though these grassy underwater plains are hiding a wealth of sugar, trying to harvest it could plunge the world into chaos. Octopus torture. One of the very last things a female octopus will do in her life is lay her eggs. In almost every species of octopus, the mother lays her eggs, stops eating, and does everything in her power to protect her eggs until just before they hatch. Then the mother octopus goes down a dark path of self-destruction. She will either beat herself to death against a rock, rip her own skin apart with her tentacles, or actually consume herself. It's brutal but entirely natural for the wild animal kingdom. Still, scientists have always wanted to learn why octopuses felt the need to destroy themselves after laying eggs. Some believed their death drew predators away from the soon-to-hatch babies. Others believed it was to protect the babies from themselves, since they are cannibals and have a thing for eating babies. Researchers have discovered a previously unknown chemical process inside the octopus that controls their barbaric self-destruction. After an octopus lays eggs, her body undergoes a unique change. The way her body produces cholesterol changes, which increases her production of steroid hormones. This creates biochemical instability. But here's something that's going to make your jaw drop. Scientists discovered that right before the octopus has its meltdown and starts eating itself, it produces insanely high levels of 7-dehydrocholesterol, also known as 7-DHC. Humans produce this as well, but we don't keep it in our systems because the compound is toxic. We simply need it when making cholesterol. But sometimes an infant is born with a genetic disorder called Smith-Lemli-Opitz syndrome. This is when they can't clear the toxic 7-DHC compound out of their body. And when it builds up in the human body, people develop behavioral issues, grow extra fingers and toes, become intellectually stunted, and self-harm. It's shocking because it shows that the same building block of cholesterol that can cause humans to hurt themselves is what's behind an octopus's self-destruction before her eggs can hatch. We may be worlds apart, but our biology is so similar, it's almost hard to believe. Thanks for watching! Which of these discoveries surprised you the most? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you soon! Bye!